In the previous video, I showed you around Delphi and Lefkada. Here we saw one of the most amazing archaeological sites and some of the bluest beaches. In this video, I am taking you along to Kefalonia with its picturesque towns, an actual European cenote, and more of these amazing beaches. After spending some time exploring Lefkada, it was time to head back to Vasiliki to take the ferry to our next Ionian island, Kefalonia, where we would be spending the next 4 days. When we were first in line to get on the ferry, all of a sudden we couldn't get the rental car to start anymore. But after a few tries, it was time for a real-life game of Tetris and a 1-hour boat journey to the island ahead. We arrived at the northernmost town of the island, called Fiscardo. We parked the car and went for a stroll through this beautiful port town. We passed by the Roman cemetery and the beautiful shops and restaurants in the port. There are so many cool activities you can do from here, like boat tours and some short scenic hikes. Our next stop was the prettiest town on the island, Assos. Assos is located on a small stretch of land connecting this smaller island onto the main island. We have made it to Assos, and this is not a really big place. It also isn't very reachable by car. But it does look really beautiful, and it is kind of similar to Cinque Terre. We took in this beautiful place and had lunch here before continuing to our last stop along the way to our accommodation. The water at Myrtos Beach was so blue, just like the beaches in Lefkada. We stayed at Casa di Lena, an Airbnb in the mountains close to Argostoli, the main city on the island. It was super spacious and well equipped. We had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, but the balcony is definitely the highlight. The only downside was the terrible road to the top of the hill from the main road. We have a beautiful view over Argostoli, which is right there, laying in the sun of the sunset. We came across a baby hedgehog on our way to dinner, but the dinner was not that great. The next day we drove around on the Lixouri part of the island. The main attraction here is Petani Beach, much like the previous beaches in this video. But this time around, we did go for a swim. The big downside to these beaches are the big waves and strong current, making it not so nice or a bit hard to swim or snorkel here. After some snorkeling in the shade of the cliff, we had a lovely lunch across from Lixouri before heading into Argostoli town for dinner. We parked the car at the bridge and walked across the bay to the city center. On our way back, the wind had picked up immensely and people were catching crabs along the side of the bridge. The next morning we set off to see the best known attraction on the island, the Melissani Cave in Sami. This is a cenote or sinkhole much like the ones in Mexico, and there aren't many in Europe. If you pay 2 extra euros, you can also visit the Drogheratti Cave, so we decided to do that afterwards. The Melissani Cave opened at 10 and we arrived at 11:15. We were done by 11:30 after waiting in line for a bit more than 30 minutes. The timing was perfect because the lighting was just right. We didn't have to be any earlier because the lighting wouldn't have been inside of the cave yet, and any later it would have been too busy. We walked around Sami town for a bit to check out the tour options for the next day and to book our ferry to the mainland. We booked a boat for the next day before heading to the Argostoli Cave. From here we drove through the mountains and along the coast of the entire southern half of the island. We had a lovely lunch in the quiet Poros. Afterwards we went for a dip near Scala. In Scala there were too many resorts for us, so we went to the more local Katokateleos. In the evening we had dinner at a lovely local tavern in the mountains called Pozzolo's Restaurant. The beefsteaks here were honestly insane. We loved it. Good morning, it is boat day and today we rented a boat in Sami, which is on the other side of the island, but it's only a half an hour drive. And we are going to take the boat around to some lovely bays that hopefully can get to by car so that we have them all to ourselves and do some proper snorkeling, which we haven't done yet on this trip. We drove back to Sami through the famous local Robola vineyards to pick up our rented boat. It took an hour before everyone was checked in and we could leave. The men of my family had a quick driver's lesson, but it was not their first rodeo. We set off in this brand new boat. It clearly had barely been used before. Our first stop was on the island of Ithaca. Here we spotted a goat that had retrieved in between the rocks to give birth. Once again, something we hadn't seen before. We went for a snorkel, which I used to love so much. My dad taught me to snorkel here before I could even swim, and it's been our thing ever since. And it was also the start of my scuba journey. Sadly, I haven't been enjoying the Mediterranean snorkeling the last few years, as the underwater world really seems to have declined. We are having another stop and I thought I would use it to show you guys around the boat. We have lots of storage in the boat. This is one of it. So this opens up. Oh, they closed it. Of course they did. This is a huge storage, so is that. And then we have a built-in cool box right there. We also got an app that tracks our location, where we can go and where it's better not to go in case we run out of fuel. We also have a tanning deck. Really spacious. This is a boat that can take up to 6 people and there's 5 of us, so it is perfect. We ran out of fuel 1 kilometer away from the port, but we topped up with the emergency fuel and made it back safely. The last thing I wanted to see on the island was the sinkholes and water mills near Argostoli. Scientists discovered that the water that disappeared into the sinkholes here, which created a current strong enough to power these flour mills, the water then reappeared on the other side of the island in the Melissani Cave. So there is an entire cave system underneath this island. We had dinner in Argostoli again, and the weather was much calmer, which made it possible to spot the sea turtles hunting for fish as the tide was lowering. Yeah! We ended our night with a beautiful full blood moon rise from the bridge. So incredible. Next up, we visited the mountain town called Kefalonia, a hidden gem in the Peloponnese, surrounded by incredible nature and history.